Corey married?" Penfield cried, incredulous and yet surprised out of himself for the moment. "Sure," Inwood said. "I saw it in the 'Frisco paper that came in over the ice this morning." "Well, who's the girl?" Pentfield demanded, somewhat with the air of patient fortitude with which one takes the bait of a catch, and is aware at the time of the large laugh bound to follow at his expense. Nick Inwood pulled the paper from his pocket and began looking it over, saying: "I haven't a remarkable memory for names, but it seems to me it's something like Mabel. Oh, yes, here it is. Mabel Holmes, daughter of Judge Holmes, whoever he is." Lawrence Pentfield never turned a hair, though he wondered how any man in the North could know her name. He glanced coolly from face to face to note any vagrant signs of the game that was being played upon him, but beyond a healthy curiosity the faces betrayed nothing. Then he turned to the gambler and said in cold, even tones: "Inwood, I got an even 500 here that says the print of what you have just said is not in that paper." The gambler looked at him in quizzical surprise. "Go away, child. I don't want your money." "I thought so," Pentfield sneered, returning to the game and laying a couple of bets. Nick Inwood's face flushed, and as though doubting his senses, he ran careful eyes over the print of a quarter of a column. Then he turned on Lawrence Pentfield. "Look here, Pentfield," he said in a quiet, nervous manner, "I can't allow that, you know." "Allow what?" Pentfield demanded brutally. "You implied that I lied." "Nothing of the sort," came the reply. "I merely implied that you were trying to be clumsily witty." "Make your bets, gentlemen," the dealer protested. "But I tell you it's true," Nick Inwood insisted. "And I have told you. I've 500 that says it's not in that paper," Pentfield answered, at the same time throwing a heavy sack of dust on the table. "I'm sorry to take your money," was the retort, as Inwood thrust the newspaper into Pentfield's hand. Pentfield saw, though he could not quite bring himself to believe, glancing through the headline, "Young Lochinvar came out of the North," and skimming the article until the names of Mabel Holmes and Corey Hutchinson, coupled together, leaped squarely before his eyes, and turned to the top of the page. It was a San Francisco paper. "The money's yours, Inwood," he remarked with a short laugh. "There's no telling what that partner of mine will do when he gets started." Then he returned to the article and read it word for word, very slowly and very carefully. He could no longer doubt. Beyond dispute, Corey Hutchinson had married Mabel Holmes. One of the Bonanza Kings, it described him, a partner with Lawrence Pentfield, whom San Francisco society has not yet forgotten, and interested with that gentleman in other rich Klondike properties. Further, at the end, he read: "It is whispered that Mr. and Mrs. Hutchinson will, after a brief trip east to Detroit, make their real honeymoon journey into the fascinating Klondike country." "I'll be back again. Keep my place for me," Pentfield said, rising to his feet and taking his sack, which meantime had hit the blower and came back lighter by $500. He went down the street and bought a Seattle paper. It contained the same facts, though somewhat condensed. Corey and Mabel were indubitably married. Pentfield returned to the Opera House and resumed his seat in the game. He asked to have the limit removed. "Trying to get action?" Nick Inwood laughed, as he nodded assent to the dealer. "I was going down to the A.C. store, but now I guess I'll stay and watch you do your worst." This Lawrence Pentfield did at the end of 2 hours' plunging. when the dealer bit the end off a fresh cigar and struck a match as he announced that the bank was broken. Penfield cashed in for $40,000, shook hands with Nick Inwood, and stated that it was the last time he would ever play at his game or anybody else's. No one knew nor guessed that he had been hit, much less hit hard. There was no apparent change in his manner. For a week he went about his work, much as he had always done when he read an account of the marriage in a Portland paper. Then he called in a friend to take charge of his mine and departed upon the Yukon behind his dogs. He held to the saltwater trail till White River was reached, into which he turned. 5 days later he came upon a hunting camp of the White River Indians. In the evening there was a feast, and he sat in honor beside the chief, and next morning he headed his dogs back toward the Yukon. But he no longer traveled alone. A young squaw fed his dogs for him that night and helped to pitch camp. She had been mauled by a bear in her childhood and suffered from a slight limp. Her name was Lashka, and she was diffident at first with the strange white man that had come out of the unknown, married her with scarcely a look or word, and now was carrying her back with him into the unknown. But Lashka's was better fortune than falls to most Indian girls that mate with white men in the Northland. No sooner was Dawson reached than the barbaric marriage that had joined them was re-solemnized in the white man's fashion before a priest. From Dawson, which to her was all a marvel and a dream, she was taken directly to the Bonanza claim and installed in the square-hewed cabin on the hill. The 9 days' wonder that followed arose not so much out of the fact of the squaw whom Lawrence Penfield had taken to bed and board as out of the ceremony that had legalized the tie. The properly sanctioned marriage was the one thing that passed the community's comprehension, but no one bothered Penfield about it. So long as a man's vagaries did no special hurt to the community let the man alone, nor was Penfield barred from the cabins of men who possessed white wives. The marriage ceremony removed him from the status of squaw man and placed him beyond moral reproach, though there were men that challenged his taste where women were concerned. No more letters arrived from the outside. 6 sled loads of mails had been lost at the Big Salmon. Besides, Penfield knew that Corry and his bride must by that time have started out over the trail. They were even then on their honeymoon trip, the honeymoon trip he had dreamed of for himself through 2 dreary years. His lip curled with bitterness at the thought, but beyond being kinder to Lashka, he gave no sign. March had passed, and April was nearing its end, when one spring morning Lashka asked permission to go down to the creek, several miles to Siwash Pete's cabin. Pete's wife, a Stewart River woman, had sent up word that something was wrong with her baby, and Lashka, who was preeminently a mother woman, and who held herself to be truly wise in the matter of infantile troubles, missed no opportunity of nursing the children of other women as yet more fortunate than she. Penfield harnessed his dogs, and with Lashka behind, took the trail down the creek bed of Bonanza. Spring was in the air. The sharpness had gone out of the bite of the frost, and though snow still covered the land, the murmur and trickling of water told that the iron grip of winter was relaxing. The bottom was dropping out of the trail, and here and there a new trail had been broken around open holes. At such a place, where there was no room for 2 sleds to pass, Penfield heard the jingle of approaching bells and stopped his dogs. A team of tired-looking dogs appeared around the narrow bend. followed by a heavily loaded sled.